Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Tonic Accord podcast. As always, it is me, Drew, and my good friend Alex. For those that don't know us, we are both political science graduates from Chapman University, currently working in various things related to politics, and we just like to do this podcast. And today, we're going to kind of put our ideologies to the test, and in fact, literally. So we're going to be taking this political compass test from politicalcompass.org. I was just reading through how this compass test is used by a lot of academics for their courses and stuff. Obviously, no test is perfect, and we'll get into maybe our gripes with the test. But we want to just kind of have fun and see where we land. So, yeah, Alex, I think that it's all based in quadrants, right? So this test is not about left and right, because often in American politics, we think of everything as a linear left and right scale. But in this, it's kind of liberal, authoritarian, and then economic right and economic left, and there's quadrants. I believe
exactly.
I believe I'm going to land in the liberal left side. So economic left, but authoritarianly liberal. So not authoritarian, basically.
And I think in terms of authoritarian to liberal, I'm going to probably land pretty similar to you. But I think I'm probably going to be at least economically a little more right. Though I've talked to a lot of friends about this, and I'm kind of a big government conservative. I believe in voting conservative, especially on a local and state level. But I sometimes actually believe that the federal government needs to be big. And so I'm kind of curious to see where I land on this, honestly.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can see here the quadrants. You have Stalin and Mao, obviously, in the up left. You have Ayn Rand right here in the kind of liberal right. So we'll see. Right. We'll see what happens. So I guess we'll just start taking the test.
Yeah, let's start taking the test.
All right.
Click that stuff.
So
and then, just to clarify. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you, please.
Okay. Yeah, so just to clarify, Drew's going to show the screen here. And, we're going to go over the questions. He's going to answer. And then on my own screen, which you guys do not see, I am also going to be taking the quiz. So, we may have different answers. But it's going to be fun. And, we've been talking about doing this for a while. I'm glad we're going to. So.
Yeah. So, I'm sure what we'll have to do is we'll have to limit our rabbit holes, because every question is probably a podcast worth of a discussion.
Yes.
So, the first one, if economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. I would agree with that.
I would agree with that as well. Yeah. Now, I'm definitely no corporatist, so.
Yeah, and I think the reason I don't put strongly agree is because sometimes you need transnational companies. Like, there are big companies that do good work and provide a lot of jobs. But I think overall, economic globalization should not be in the interest of just those companies. I'd always support my country, whether it is right or wrong. Disagree for me.
And I mean, this is kind of a Tonic Accord type of answer, but I'm gonna agree, but not strongly agree.
Okay, all right.
Because I think it's healthy to always distrust your country a little bit, because nothing's ever perfect. But I think at the same time, the social fabric to hold together a country, you need to have support for your country, even the negatives and the positives. I think good change comes out when you're willing to better it, not destroy it. So that's why I say agree.
That's interesting. All right. I mean, it's not kind of the same mentality I have, but all right. Interesting. No one chooses their country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. I disagree with that. I think that in a weird way, it's true. The first premise is true, right? Obviously, no one chooses their country of birth. It is kind of random, right? You get the lotto of life. But I don't think there's necessarily something inherently wrong with being proud of where you're born and where you're from. I think it's also human nature. People are proud of whether it's down to L.A. Like, yeah, man, L.A. pride, go Dodgers. Like, I could have been born in another city, but I'm proud of being in L.A. because that's kind of what people do. So I don't think it's necessarily inherently bad to be proud of where you're from.
Yes. I strongly agree with that one, just because, basically what you said, I think the first premise is true, that it's chance. But also, I think the second part of this statement is just not at all related to the first one, like you said. So, I strongly disagree. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. Woo.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. This isn't the way it's worded. Our race. So I guess it's just.
Aren't humans?
I
Aren't we all? Yeah.
I think and again, like, so I mean, this definitely could go into, you have to word your questions in a test better, right? Because yeah, our human race, or is it like whoever the reader is or the taker of the test assumes your race? So me, white, but if someone else was taking this, if they were Latino, they would assume that they're discussing like my race, being Hispanic or whatever. So I think this is just a racism check.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think we're looking too into this.
Yeah, I think it's just, I'm going to strongly disagree because I'm not racist.
I'm also going to go with that just because of how the Twitter mob is these days. I don't want to step on my own feet.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Oof. I disagree.
You disagree. I think I think in a utopian world, right? No, but I think politically it's true. I think, whether we like it or not, maybe we don't are comfortable with it, but I think the reality is certainly people use this politically. And I would if I was a campaign manager. So I'm going to agree.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, I think I'm just looking internationally. I just think sometimes almost one of the faults of the U.S. foreign policy is that we kind of buddy up with people who are just enemies of our enemies. And like more internationally, I don't like that.
That's true. Dang,
So.
man. You might have just convinced me. I'm going to go just disagree. Not strongly, but just disagree. I'm on the
that's
fence.
where I'm at. Cause I agree that sometimes you do need to be friends with your enemies, but
Right.
I don't know if you need to think of them as your friend either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because on the other hand, it's like if you get too in the weeds with this, then it's like I'm only friends with people that are exactly like me, and I don't like that either. I wish there was like a neutral option for some of these.
Yeah.
Military.
Yeah, I've seen some quizzes that have that. Anyways.
Yeah. Definitely a fault with this quiz. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Military.
I strongly agree. Yep.
I think I would agree, but not strongly. Why would you strongly agree?
Just because I think international. I actually recorded a catching up that I haven't put out yet about this, but it's like I think international law is only as strong as those who comply with it. And so just because international law is international law, if someone violates it, I think another country has a right to respond, or also maybe international law is flawed or outdated. Like there's just so many ways in which sometimes international law isn't perfect. So
Yeah.
I think you do have to balance like global peace, but also the protection of your country. And sometimes those could go against each other.
That's probably true. I mean, who's to say international law is perfect? I mean, it's not. I mean, by definition, I would think so. That's a good point. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. I strongly agree with that. You have people on the left getting all their news from late night TV shows hosts like Stephen Colbert, and then you have people on the right getting all their information from YouTube channels, and YouTube channels designed to be entertaining. So yes, this is very true.
Right. And even Bob Woodward's new book, Rage, that I bought, I'm not even reading it because I want to learn anything. I'm reading it because I think it's going to be entertaining.
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's important that we recognize that and we have multiple sources of our information. Like it's something wrong to get information and entertainment compacted together, but it can't be the only way, and we have to watch out for how much of it is it really information and how much of it is it really entertainment.
Definitely. Now we're on to the economy, I guess.
Yeah, now the economy. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. Oof. I think these days it's true. Perhaps in the past it was different, but I think I would agree with that.
I'm just gonna moderately disagree, so I'm not gonna go strongly disagree, just because I agree with the statement you just made, but I also think that most, at least historic, and even still in the modern world, a lot of it is nationality, maybe in terms of even like religious nationality or like cultural nationality. In the United States, it's definitely divided by class, and I think a lot of Europe and yeah, parts of India, South America, but Also, I think you can't look at class without looking at maybe your cultural identity and maybe how your culture was either oppressed or whatever. So I think they're kind of intertwined. So I'm not going to put one over the other, and that's why I disagree.
They're certainly intertwined many times. You're definitely right, and yeah, I'm that's why I'm not putting strongly agree, because I'm not at the point of Karl Marx where it's only class. But yeah, I think like, for example, right, like the United States in the early 2000s had a lot of problems with Islamic countries, except the ones that gave us money and the ones that were rich. Right. So I think that's where something like that is evidence of that. But you're right, it's not strong one either way, I would say. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment.
Oof. Oh God, this is where I wish there was a neutral.
Yeah. Because I think, I mean, they're obviously intertwined, right? Like, if you just go after, if you just try and get everyone employed, but you ignore inflation, then your currency is, I mean, it's just going to come back around to bite you, right? Then it'll be,
I'm going to disagree, but only moderately disagree. Because I almost think that, like, as society, like the health of just the people in your society, like employment is probably the first gauge of that. So yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one.
It's such a tough one. This one is really like more important, but like how much of a degree, right? Like, yeah, it's a weird one. And again, I do wish there was maybe a couple more options of like more degrees of agreement and maybe a neutral. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. I'm going to strongly agree with that one. I think we've seen it. Personally, I think it's just obvious based on what we know about global warming, the fact that large companies like ExxonMobil and Shell have known about it for years and have purposely suppressed the evidence for it. You have to regulate businesses like that.
I'm going to disagree, but not strongly disagree, but not because of what you said there, but because of just more the premises of the question. Because I think you're right that we cannot trust corporations to voluntarily do things to protect the environment, but I also don't really trust all of the actual regulations themselves. Because, I mean, if you look at states like California, I would argue that the regulations have gone too far, where they've almost impeded other aspects like employment, economy. I think there needs to be a balance, and I think this question is a little bit too black and white. So that's why I disagree with the requirement of regulation.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, they're very like strong, like they require regulation because corporations cannot be trusted. Like, not some, like they're trying to get very I don't know, one way or the other. They're being very matter of fact, and it's up to you to figure it out. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need, is a fundamentally good idea. I think this is one of those things where it's like, in a perfect world, yes, but like I don't know, like it's the same thing of like, yeah, like it's like the same thing of like, you know, everyone's born equal. Like, yeah, okay, sure, but like, what happens in real life? People don't treat each other that way. People don't, like, sure, it should. I also think maybe what it's saying here is like need-based economy.
Yeah. You know, I don't really have too strong of an opinion on this one. I'm just going to agree. I'm just going to agree. I think, like you said, it's kind of comes back to abstract versus reality.
Right.
And yeah, I'm just gonna say I agree.
The freer the market, the freer the people. I will agree with that. I think that based on what we've seen in the world, the economies, I mean, again, it's all politically tied together as well, right? But the economies that allow for more free movement and free capital flow and businesses generally have more human rights and more political freedom generally. You know, and again, like, look at Hong Kong. Hong Kong is in a place where they don't have much political freedom, or they didn't, or not as much as like the United States, but they live in a free market where they're exposed to the world and exposed to globalization, and they're the bastion of revolt against the Chinese government in China, right? So I would agree with that.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. I also strongly agree with that. I mean, I do I do think that, there are economic limits that I think in theory, this kind of goes back to theory, that I do think regulations of domestic and international markets can be beneficial. But again, usually the end is more oppression than freedom. So yeah, I strongly agree. I think at least what history tells us is that open societies, open economies are better than the alternative. So yes.
Uh,
And it's a
and
sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. I disagree. I disagree because I think this is just completely out of context. I mean, yes, I think water should always be free, and as a country should invest in clean, renewable resources, and so that also means water. Water is a basic right. Every human needs to survive off of it. But the reality is there are places in the world where the water is not drinkable. Unfortunately, because the freer, back to the other one, the freer the market, the freer the people. Countries take advantage of markets, and they're going to privatize things like what's the company, like Arrowhead bottled water. Like I think there's a slippery slope if you start limiting companies from selling stuff like that, especially in areas where maybe the drinking water isn't good. So like that's a complicated one, but I would disagree.
I think I'm going to agree, but again, it's based off of like, I don't know. It's tough because look, I know that Nestle has done incredibly awful things to secure private rights to water resources in countries that desperately need a better public water resource system. So that is what I'm thinking of when I read this. But again, it's not. It's what. So I'm going to agree with it, but I'm not going to strongly agree with it because I'm not going to say that you can't sell sparkling water anymore. Like I'm not going to go that far. It's just that I think it is a sad reflection that some of these large water companies are taking advantage of lesser developed nations with their water supply. But I'm not opposed to Propel selling lemon water. Like that's not bad in my opinion. So yeah, that's a weird one. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Disagree. People should be able to buy land.
Strongly disagree.
I think that it's a good way for people to move up in economic status, like owning property. Even if you start small over time, like owning things and owning land and owning property is a great way that people in poverty can get themselves out of poverty. And if land, let's say land isn't a commodity to be bought and sold, then who owns it? It's all the governments. I mean, I don't know about that.
Right. And like this one, I actually have kind of a bone to pick with, especially now, just because The Economist had a great piece that was talking basically about this problem, is how capitalism has worked in the first world, mainly because of private property. It's failing in a lot of the third world because there is actually no existence of private property, or there's no proof of private property. Like, yeah, you can say you own this plot of land or you own this farm, but because of the lack of deeds or a strong legislative system, you can get that taken away from you, and all your wealth could be taken away. I just feel like if you look at especially a lot of Africa, it went from white landowners kind of oppressing the natives to then kind of in the 90s or the 80s and 90s, excuse me, you kind of had then the opposite happening, where you kind of had the African, indigenous populations then just stripping land from anybody. And so I think that's a slippery slope. And then I would also say tragedy of the commons in general. Like, when you overuse just public land or any public good, usually the quality goes down. So, yes.
Yeah. Is it regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money? It is regrettable. Yeah, many manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. It is regrettable. I mean, I think that the 2008 financial crisis happened because of people like that. So I agree.
Yeah.
I'm not strongly agreeing because I do think that people should have access to the stock market. Like I said about land, anyone can play in the stock market. Now, most people that do play in the stock market are vastly wealthy, but the barrier of entry is none. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to play markets, but it is regrettable how much power some of these people do have over the overarching economy. So I'll agree.
Yep. I just moderately disagree, but I understand the sentiment you're going with there.
Yeah.
So, I don't have too much more to say on that.
Protectionism is sometimes
Protectionism
necessary.
is sometimes necessary in trade. Yeah.
What do you think?
Yes, I strongly agree.
Wow, strongly.
Yeah, I've been kind of battling with this idea for a long time. And I mean, I think we've talked about it on this podcast back when we covered the trade war with China. And I think in the long term, some of Trump's protectionist policies actually could help some consumer goods in the United States. But it was unfortunately Trump's message was a lie. It's going to overnight build wealth and help American farmers. That's not the case, because in the short term, prices are going to go up and there could be scarcity of other products. But in the long term, sometimes protectionism is necessary. So actually, I'm going to detract from strongly agree to agree.
Yeah.
Because I do think protectionism, if used correctly, can work.
I think I agree with you, because, in the sense of like a Latin American republic, banning, you have to use their cars, that's not good. But in the sense of the United States banning Huawei to protect its own tech secrets, I agree with that. So I can agree with it well. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver profit to its shareholders. Disagree.
I strongly disagree, actually. Yeah,
I might strongly disagree as well. I think that's might be where it used to be. I think that's probably how they act. But I have to imagine that a better society for all people is one where large companies do things in the interest of the greater good, and that could also be profitable, right? Like a company that's branding itself as going green could benefit themselves profit-wise while also benefiting society. So yeah, it should not just be about shareholders, and I think we agree on that. The rich are too highly taxed. I strongly disagree.
I disagree. I think that rich again is like a broad term in this, because
Sure.
If you make not six figures, but if you make $500,000, I think that's technically like upper middle class or almost rich, right? I think it was Cole and I who talked about this. Like we looked at like the top 5%, and the top 5% barely breaks $1 million. And top 10%, all of I think it was like 200,000 a year, like combined household. And I would say that I guess some people would classify making six figures rich, but technically it's not. And so I don't think taxing a family with working incomes is good. But then also the rich like Bezos, bring it on, tax him. He's disrupted labor markets, he should be taxed. But the rich are too highly taxed. It's just too vague for me to have a strong opinion on.
That's fair. I mean, that's fair, because you're right. They don't define rich, so that's a really good point. In my opinion, I'm thinking of the 1% of the 1%, right? I'm not when I read this, I'm not reading the 200,000K or 200K family. But some people would be. So you're right. It's kind of a weird question. But I also think real quick, I also think that maybe on paper the rich are taxed fairly. But in de facto, right, the reality is they avoid tax through tax loopholes, and that's where I think so yes, are they too highly taxed? Maybe not on paper, but in reality, if they're dodging it, then they're not getting taxed at all. Like Jeff Bezos barely paid any taxes. So I strongly disagree that they're getting too much. They're not getting taxed too much, I don't think. But you're right. It's a weird question. Another one where we're realizing the kinks in the armor of this test is, how do they define rich? Because you're right. I mean, if you ask someone from Venezuela, I'm rich. You and I are both rich to someone who is struggling to get in a bread line. It's all relative. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care.
I agree. And now with an asterisk next to that, I think we need to have a better universal healthcare system, especially in the United States. I think everyone should have basic access to preventable healthcare. But then again, I think one of the shiny parts of the U.S. and one of the important parts of our innovation is the fact that profits do drive medical innovation. Mm-hmm. And I've seen firsthand in Spain how a lot of people who have severe medical problems still end up wanting to pay to come to the United States to get better treatment, because a lot of countries just don't have access to these higher standards of medical care. So I think for example, in the United States, we need better universal care, but also I think it is the profits that drive innovation.
For sure. Yeah, I just realized we're probably gonna have to start speed running these. I knew this was gonna happen. I knew this was gonna because we're so invested, but we are gonna have to speed run these. What's up, Dark Sage in the chat? Good to see you, man. Yeah, feel free to ask a question. We might have to do it after the end of the test, but yeah, if you want to have a question, feel free to shoot. We're gonna have to start like just zipping through though. Government should penalize businesses that mislead the public. I strongly agree. This just happened to Mercedes. They lied about emissions. They got fined. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. Agree. Monopolies.
I strongly agree.
Yeah, monopolies are antithetical to competition, and if the free market is based off competition driving innovation, you can't have monopolies. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. Strongly disagree.
I disagree.
All authority should be questioned. Questioned, agree. Not ignored, but questioned, agree.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
An eye for an
eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth.
Disagree.
No, I strongly disagree. Yeah, strongly disagree.
Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. Disagree. Strongly disagree. There are certain things that we can't have our entire culture be driven by what can make profit. There's something greater, I think, in the human experience of arts and literature and that kind of creative aspect that should not be solely tied down to making money.
Yeah, I think if it's a failing business, we shouldn't prop it up. But if it has cultural advantage, then I agree with that statement.
I mean, if no one goes to the museum in a year and a half, sure, you might want to relook at the funding. But I think that in general, it shouldn't only be about making money. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. I'm assuming they mean like the required schooling, not college.
Right.
Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. This is one of those words like I wish there was a neutral because I'm sure there's some exception about like a kid with medical health things that needs to skip a class. Like, I don't know. I'm just going to put agree.
Yeah, and I'm going to put disagree. I don't know. I don't like forcing people. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That one's a weird one. I feel like I feel like I don't know enough context about what they're meaning. Or all people have their rights.
Me neither.
All people have their rights, but it's better for all of us that different sorts of people should be keep to their own kind. Strongly disagree.
Boy.
Strongly disagree.
Yeah, that's dangerous rhetoric.
Yeah,
dangerous rhetoric.
I believe that if we, with enough education and understanding that we can live in a multicultural society. I live in Los Angeles.
Yep.
I have no problem with that. So, good parents sometimes have to spank their children. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I mean, punish and be harsh on, but I don't know about physically spank. So maybe I'm just gonna disagree, but not strongly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually just going to agree because I think our generation is soft, and most parents I talk to, like my parents, grandparents, they were spanked. They turned out okay. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, again, I mean, yeah, it's a weird one. It's like, should we hit kids? Probably shouldn't hit kids, but I mean, yeah, there's discipline needs to be involved. If it's natural for children to keep secrets from their parents, strongly agree. I mean, come on. It is natural.
That's not even political.
Yeah, that is natural. You can like it or not, but it is natural. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Strongly agree.
As well.
Yeah, I don't think you should go to jail for a plant that makes you tired and hungry.
I agree.
The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. Primary function.
I strongly disagree.
I'm going to disagree, but not strongly, because I do think we need to do more about like teaching kids to live in society, like maybe not jobs, but just like how to do taxes, how to get a mortgage, like what a mortgage is, like things like that. But we should also obviously educate people in many things so that they can find their own avenue. So it shouldn't just about, I mean, that's another weird one. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to produce. Ooh, that's like eugenics, dog. Ooh,
good boy.
Disagree, but it's weird.
I actually agree, but not strongly agree, because I don't want to sound like some Nazi here or something. But I do think that Darwinism in general would say that that is not natural. Or if it is that natural, it's not sustainable. So, I mean, again, I'd probably be neutral on this one, but I'm going to go with agree.
Okay. Sage, I saw you just posted that comment. We'll have to take a look at it after we're done this recording because we just don't have enough time right now. But I read half of it, and I do want to talk about it a little bit. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. Disagree. That's not the most important thing.
No, definitely not the most.
There are no savage and civilized peoples. There are only different cultures. This is a tough one because I think there are certainly, like ISIS, those people are savage. But there is also a lot of, I do believe in some sort of cultural relativism. I don't know.
I'm going to disagree just because, I just think that's too broad. And there are examples through history and even in the world, like you said right now, of, by definition, savage cultures.
Like, I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that there's civilized peoples, but there are definitely savage peoples. Those who are able to work, maybe we're all savage. Maybe that's what it is. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity, should not expect society's support. I agree with that. If you're able to work and if you just don't want to, then don't expect a handout. I think that's fine. When you are troubled, it's better to not think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. I agree with that. I don't know why that's political.
I actually I disagree with that because I think it's good to talk, but I don't know why that's political either.
Yeah, I mean, like I agree. Like, you need to talk about things, but I also find that if I'm stressed out, if I do other things, I get less stressed. So I don't know. Yeah, that's just like a psychological one. First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated with their new country. Disagree. Never. I mean, the fact that he says never, never be fully integrated. I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, I disagree as well. Now, I do think the first generation are going to have a more difficult time assimilating, but that doesn't mean it can never happen, right? Never say never.
Yeah. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us. Strongly disagree on my end.
Definitely strongly disagree as well.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's even a discussion about that, honestly. Just look at history, look at like what some of these corporations have done, like to water,
the Dutch East India Trading Company, the largest corporation to ever exist ever, and the multi-trillion dollars. They kind of did a lot of effed up stuff. No broadcasting institution, however independent is its content, should receive public funding. Ooh.
I agree.
How you agree? I'm going to disagree on the basis that it is independent, which is hard to pin down. I know, but next page. We just got to keep going at this point. Damn, our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. Agree.
I strongly agree. Yeah, I had a Chapman professor, not going to use the name. He said that if you get rid of terrorism, you also get rid of democracy.
Interesting. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all arguments that delay of a one. Oh no. A one-party state. Screw that. Get out of here.
I disagree strongly.
Yeah, although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. Disagree. One day you're not a wrongdoer, the next day you are. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. I agree, actually. I agree.
I strongly agree. I've always thought that sometimes it's necessary.
I think some people are just like the Ted Bundys of the world, just cannot live in society. In a civilized society, one must always have people above and obeyed, and people below to be commanded. Ooh. I think so. I think uncomfortable as it may sound, that is the way it works. That is what government is. That is exactly what like law enforcement. Law enforcement are to be are to be obeyed. That's what whole law like this. It makes it sound worse than it is, but it's true. That's what government is. We have to give some kind of people the legitimate authority to give out commands that the society then has to abide by. Otherwise, we live in anarchy.
Yeah, I mean, you and I talked about the vigilantism in Milwaukee and Kenosha, and I think that's it, is when the state doesn't have a monopoly on violence, that's when you start to see chaos on the streets. So I agree with you. I at first disagreed with you because I was going to say, oh, we should only be a watchman, a watchdog state. But it's true. You do need a hierarchy and a monopoly of violence.
Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all.
I strongly agree, but it's not for political reasons. I just agree. I hate some of the shit that's coming out these days.
I don't like abstract art, but I also think that if someone else does, then it can be art to them. I'm going to disagree. But yeah, that's a weird one. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. Disagree. I think rehabilitation, for the most part, for most crimes, should be more important. I mean, again, we're exception for the Ted Bundys of the world, but it's a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. Some. This is one of those.
I agree.
It's one of those neutral ones where I wish, like, how much of some are you talking about? Like, some though. Yeah, sure. The Ted Bundys. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. To who, though?
Yeah, that's a weak question.
I think they need each other. Disagree.
I disagree. Yeah.
And mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Disagree. We live in a society now where the duties of the household can easily be shared between two parties.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would probably be neutral on that because I think like you have to add just the kind of historical context where I do think mothers are important as homemakers.
Absolutely.
But again, like you said, things are changing. Yeah, so I would disagree, but it's really close. It's like basically a 0, but I guess I'm at like a 1 or 2.
For sure. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of development. 100%. I've studied this. I studied this for months in Central America, and I've seen it firsthand. So I strongly agree. I've literally studied the soil samples around like banana fincas and how they're poisoning water sources. 100%. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity.
Interesting. That's a very fascinating one.
Ooh.
That to me kind of sounds somewhat like fascist.
I think I would agree if it was worded differently. If it was worded with understanding the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. Not making peace. You don't necessarily have to make peace, but you have to understand it. So I'm going to disagree, but I would have agreed if it was worded differently. Because I'm not saying just submit to the establishment, but it's like, for people that are like, man, like the world sucks, it's unfair, and then they just give up, like, dude, like, you're going to have to use the system to work the system, I think.
Totally. The next page, we have astrology accurately explains many things. Bullshit. Strongly disagree.
My girlfriend's going to kill me, but strongly disagree. Strongly disagree.
Sorry.
You cannot be moral without being religious. You cannot be moral without being religious.
This is like a Sam Harris-Ben Shapiro debate.
I'm going to strongly disagree.
I'm going to disagree, but I actually think that this could be a very open discussion where there are arguments that things like the Ten Commandments have at least guided our modern institutions towards where we're at now in forms of democracy. But then also, how did society before that, like our Judeo-Christian values, survive? So I don't even want to get into that because it's too complicated. But I disagree, but not strongly. All
right, maybe we'll have to revisit that kind of topic. Where does our sense of morality and laws come from?
Right.
Charity is better than Social Security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. I would disagree.
Me too.
I think that obviously. Yeah, go ahead.
I just question sometimes where the money goes in charities. But then at the same time, I do think that charities can also be good. But then at the same time, I think Social Security is at least black and white in the way that it delivers help. Oh, it's not perfect.
Yeah, I think that obviously charity's good. I'm not saying charity's bad, but you're right that some charities can't be trusted. And I think that if charity was good at patching up the societal woes, why do we still have so many societal woes, right? Like charity obviously does things, but it doesn't fix all the problems. And that's where I think you need a bigger government hand sometimes. Some people are naturally unlucky. I don't know how to interpret this. Is this like Like, is this that thought experiment where you have to roll the dice on like what you are in the world, and you have to think about like is someone that's born disabled in a developing country, is that how you defined naturally unlucky, or is it this like superstitious idea of, oh, nothing ever good happens to me because I'm just like cursed as unlucky? Like, I don't believe in unlucky as like a curse. I do believe that people are born into what I would consider unlucky situations, but I don't know how to interpret this.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I would again be neutral on this one, because I think, as you said, if you're born in Syria to a poor family in the middle of Assad's air raids, I mean, your outlook on life is probably not great. But then at the same time, I don't like people who just say, "Oh, shucks, I can't do anything just because I'm unlucky. Everybody hates me." I would say, well, then get yourself up by your bootstraps and do something about it. But yeah, like, I don't know. So I'm gonna say disagree.
Yeah.
But not because I have a strong opinion.
Yeah, I think I'm saying disagree because I don't believe in this superstitious idea of luck. Like, I don't believe in like luck as that much. But as far as, anyway, it is important that my child's school instills religious values. I'm going to disagree. I think it's important that schools like expose children to cultures and different religions, but not instills religious values. So I'm going to disagree.
Yep, I'm with you there. I think religiosity can be good while still not just like, Bible pounding, like indoctrination.
Exactly. It should be exposing people to religion, because religion is a part of humanity, but not shoving it down your throat. Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. I'm going to strongly disagree.
I am also going to strongly disagree.
I think we're past. I think I'm personally past the Puritan outlook on that. I don't think it's a problem. A same-sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded. Double negative here. Should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. So that means they should be allowed to adopt a child. Okay, I agree.
I strongly agree, because I think it's all about just applying the same merits to straight and gay couples. If your shitty parents don't have a kid and don't allow the state shouldn't allow you to have a kid, but if you're good, responsible, and have the financial means, go ahead.
I mean, based on how many marriages of heterosexual couples that fail and are terrible, I don't think it has any base. I don't think the sex has any basis on the parenting ability. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the. I strongly agree. Come on, we live in a free society.
I agree, but I don't strongly agree, because I do think kind of where porn is going, it's kind of desensitizing, a lot of people, and I think the cultural health of porn, I think we're seeing some like problems.
Sure, but that's like gambling, right? Gambling's not good, but like, do we make it illegal? Like, do we tell people what their freedom is? I mean, so it should be allowed, especially the fact that they said consenting adults, right? That's the big one. If everyone's consenting and involved, you can choose to consume it or not, but it should be allowed to happen, I think. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. Strongly agree. Get out of there. Come on.
I agree. Out
of
my room, boy.
Yeah, fuck out of here. No one can feel naturally homosexual. No one can feel strongly disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's been enough research.
If you if you don't know the answer to this out there, I encourage you to just talk to someone that is gay, because they'll tell you that they didn't choose this life. It was one that was upon them. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. I'm going to strongly disagree.
I strongly agree.
You agree? Oh, wow.
Okay. I do, because again, I think one of the earlier questions is the reason why it reminded me why I agree with this. It says what goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. And I want to expand that to society. Like, I just talked to so many older Americans, and they all tell me the same thing. They're like, I don't care what you do, but I don't need to hear about it, because I think for progress, sometimes you don't need to just be in everyone's face about it. And like, as a person who's accepting, and I think a lot of people are more accepting than you want to give them credit for, I think being too open, like this whole like, just growing pronoun list, for example, I think it's
Sure.
detrimental to the cause.
Sure. I mean, okay. So you think it's gone too far? I personally think like okay, like I mean maybe a few exceptions where that's more of a. But I think in general, the openness about sex is also tied into, um, you know, independence for women and kind of a change in like viewing sex as a just a part of humanity instead of tied to a product like reproduction and everything. Um, and I don't know. I don't think like maybe the commodification of sex has gone too far, right? Maybe the like you know you have to have a sexy model on every ad or whatever. Like there's definitely a conversation to be had about the role that sex in our culture plays and how people are raised and understand it. But I don't think generally openness about sex, like talking about it, being open about it, being accepting of it. I don't think it's gone too far in general. So I take it you're not a big fan of WAP by Cardi B, huh?
I'm not. I am not. I find it counterintuitive, counterproductive, and just plain right not art. But that's a whole other
Own, man.
conversation.
To each their own. Hey, look, she's just saying what people have been saying with different words. That's all. That's my point.
Fair.
Okay, so let's see. Okay, that's it. That's the test. So let's see where we stand.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Okay, so
Ooh, I'm nervous. Okay, so it says here, it goes. So give us a little introduction about the political compass, right? So okay, so you can. It's doing big examples like Stalin, Mao, and Pol Pot or authoritarian left. So you can see here the quadrants: authoritarian right, that's like top authoritarian right is probably like Hitler. A top authoritarian left is probably like Stalin. But then you have libertarian right and libertarian left, and then obviously it's a sliding scale. So even if you're in the quadrant, like even if you're an authoritarian left, but you're more towards the center, you're not that close to Stalin. Like it's a big scale. So social scale is the y-axis, and economic scale is the x-axis. Okay. Okay, so here it gives us some examples. So Margaret Thatcher is over here on authoritarian right. Hitler's up here. Interesting. Stalin's top left. Gandhi, libertarian left. Milton Friedman, right, is a libertarian right. Makes sense. Just for those to get a better idea of what the scale represents. Okay. Wow. I'm kind of actually where I thought I was going to be, which is libertarian left, and kind of in the smack dab center of it.
Yeah, I'll show you guys on my iPad here. Let me just put it up to the screen. I am right about.
Oh, okay. I see it. So you're on the line between LibLeft and LibRight.
Yes.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, yours makes perfect sense to me as well.
That's interesting. I kind of landed where I thought I was going to land. I actually thought I was going to be a little bit closer to the center on some of these. I thought I was going to be a little bit closer to like the actual like the center of the. I still thought I was going to be in LibLeft, but maybe the top right of LibLeft. But I'm smack dab in the middle of LibLeft. Interesting. And you are, so I'm going to just kind of highlight it on my screen here. You're kind of on that, you're on that line between LibLeft and LibRight.
Yes. And honestly, I thought I was going to be maybe a little bit more to the right. I'm really not surprised because I consider myself just one of those people who has, maybe one extreme view that would be considered right wing, and then one extreme view that would be considered left wing, or one centrist view. And so I think it kind of all offsets to just basically center libertarian. And that's like, I've always kind of considered myself somewhat of a big government libertarian, which I know that sounds
counterintuitive,
but that's kind of where I stand. And yeah, I mean, this is interesting. This is fun. I like it. Yeah, we'll have to put these up. This will be the new Tonic Accord image. Now we can just say, yeah, we're right here. Smack dab.
Boom. Okay, so I mean, this has been a super long episode, so let's wrap it up real quick. But kind of fun. Go through the political compass test. I encourage you out there, if you're listening, take it for yourself. See where you land. Are you close to where you think you land? Or are you not? I certainly had some gripes with this test. I'm sure, Alex, you did as well. There were some weirdly worded questions that were vague. Like, again, how do they define rich? How do they define, disabled, right? There were some things that were like, it could go either way. But for the most part, I thought the test was interesting. Certainly fun to take. And I think the main point that I wanted to get across for this episode, for those listening, that it is not a sliding left and right scale. You know what I mean? If someone says, oh, I'm on the left, it doesn't mean they're close to Stalin. Or I'm on the right, it doesn't mean they're close to Hitler. Like, there's so much in between. And it's a multi-axis scale that we're talking about: economic, social, libertarian. So, and again, not everyone's ideology is really set in stone or a through line. People could have kind of, cognitive dissonance and believe two different things that conflict each other, but people believe that. So just, that's kind of the takeaway here, is that, let's remember how complex political thought can be, and how, there's a wide variety where people can land. With that, do you want to say anything before we head out, Alex?
No, I agree with you. I think it was interesting to see how many times you and I are like, I don't think this question actually sums up what we're thinking.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe a lot of Americans or people around the world in general maybe feel that way, that the questions that are being asked aren't warranting the correct responses. So, yeah.
All right, well, with that, take care. You can find us on Twitch, live streaming right here, and YouTube, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, and a plethora of third-party sites. And we'll see you soon. Bye.